In our age of advanced technology.
And I'm doing great today, Dr. Ed. What's up?
People are naturally attracted to those who are authentic.
I always knew I would do something big. I knew I was built to do something special.
It led over time to a pretty dark place.
As soon as my feet hit the ground in the morning, I've made a choice not to stop unless I'm asleep.
I'm a 22-year overnight success.
How do I find the freaking jack to get to the next level?
All right, Laptop Lifestyle listeners, I have an incredible guest today, and that is actually Tim Paige. Tim, how you doing today?
What's up, man? I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm excited. I always say that, though, but I'm really excited because you and I feel like I know you. You know, we've kind of had these relationships over like the last 12 months. I send people to you. You're doing the voiceovers. I've been following you on social media. I mean, you're just crushing it, and I know you're going to bring incredible value for listeners today. But before we start, Tim, tell us, who is Tim Paige?
Well, and thanks for that. And it's I'm kind of somebody called me like a Swiss Army knife of stuff because it's a little crazy. But first and foremost, husband and dad. I have I'm married to a beautiful woman, and we have a 2.5-year-old boy, and then a baby on the way. So that's super exciting. And that's the biggest thing. I structure everything I do around that. But beyond that, work-wise, I am the senior conversion educator for a company called Lead Pages, which is a software tool that helps you get leads and sales. And so I do the podcast for Lead Pages. It's called Conversion Cast. I host our webinars, which I've done now 700. I think it was 750 was the official number in 3 years. And I speak at live events all over the place. I'm also a professional voice actor, mostly doing TV promos and stuff. And most people know my work from the UFC. So if you see a commercial for the UFC and the guy goes like this, UFC 401, that's me. And then beyond that, just a big old comic fanatic. I literally have the most crazy comic collection in my whole office where I do all the work for my entire, family, everything we do. And it's just covered in comic books. It looks like a kid's bedroom. So that's me.
Beautiful. And I always love to talk about timeline because this is such a relevant discussion for the aspiring online entrepreneur. Like, Tim, when did you start down this path? I mean, when was it first like, look, I'm going to be the podcaster. I'm going to work at, become the lead, the lead generation expert that you are today. When did you start down that path?
Well, ever since I was 18, I've been great at sales. Like, sales was my thing because I got the psychology of showing somebody how something could help them. I always seemed to do really well because everybody else was trying to like convince people, and I was just showing them how something would help them, right? And so I took that, and I had been in sales all this time. But at one point, I was in a band. We were touring, and things were awesome, and then things weren't awesome, and we were broke and trying to figure it out. So I had started a business. Did that for a few years, made some pretty good money, but was like, look, it's time. I want to do something that I actually like, and I want to have time. I'm going to have a baby. Like, I want to live this really cool life that I envision could be lived, but I'm not sure about it. And so one night after a super long day, I was plopped down on the couch next to my wife. At the time, she wasn't my wife yet, but we were watching TV, and somebody in this random show, I still don't know what it was. They said the word passive income, or the words passive income. And I was like, what is that? That sounds awesome. I have the exact opposite of that. What is it? So I Googled it, and Pat Flynn, who is now a good friend of mine, his website came up, and it's called Smart Passive Income. And I started listening to all of his podcast episodes, and I was like, and this was 2012 maybe. So, not that long ago, 4 years ago? Maybe 2011, but 2011, 2012-ish. And I was just obsessed. The first thing I heard was a guy named Billy Murphy. He was interviewed on the show. And at the time, his website was called Blue Fire Poker. He taught people how to be awesome at poker. And he was making a ridiculous amount of money. That was cool, but I was already making a lot of money. But the thing is, he was working like 3-4 hours a day from wherever he wanted. And I was like, that's it. This is it. Like, I need to do this. I need to figure this out. So I instantly learned everything I could about podcasting, online business, growing your email list, all these things, everything I could figure out. I started a podcast as soon as I could. It was horrible. In 6 months, I had dropped that and gone to another podcast, which I had for another 6 months, and that was horrible. And then so I'd say about a year I had been podcasting and learning about online business before I ever started a business that made $1. And then at that point, I had become good friends with a few people that turned out to be big influencers. They weren't when we first became friends, but then they blew up, and I started learning from them and kind of following them. And I started to have some traction, and I started to have some success with my voiceover business, and people started to hire me without any work. I mean, they would just email me and say, "Hey, will you do a podcast intro for me? I liked what you did with so-and-so show." And from there, I just took all that and translated it. And in less than a year from then, I was introduced to Clay from Lead Pages and signed on to the team there. So I would say that maybe 18 months from the time I was like, I'm going to do this online business thing until I was, I would say very successful, at least by my standards. 18 months. But that's understanding I had been a salesperson and an entrepreneur for over a decade before then.
I got to tell you, and I'll give you a shout out for Lead Pages here too. This is unsolicited, by the way, but that was probably one of the first things, like when I looked into going into this, like investigating this passive income and creating something online. I started out with Lead Pages, and I couldn't even program a VCR. If anyone knows what a VCR is, and if I can figure that stuff out, then anyone can figure it out. It's a very powerful tool. I want to ask you, Tim. Passive income. It's almost like a cliche these days. Now people say that, and I actually even get people will say to me, if I ever say that word passive, like that phrase, they'll say, "Well, that's BS." And part of me still feels like it is, because now I'm in the ditch doing it. There is work and effort that's required. Do you still buy into passive income, or do you feel it's more like automated and maintained?
Yeah, that's great. At the time, it just sounded awesome to me. But I agree. There are some forms of passive income, but for the most part, I don't think there's really much in the way of true passive income. I think maybe if you had a ton of money and invested it, and you were just getting the interest, that's kind of passive income. That's about the only one that I know that's truly passive, though. Yeah, automated and maintained, absolutely. And the funny thing is now, it's not so much that I'm not even really looking for passive income. What I'm looking for and have found is a business that allows me to be home when I want to be home, which is most of the time, to be able to not have to work 18-hour days, 7 days a week, to not have to give up my life in pursuit of my job or my business. That's what I think is more important than passive income, at least to me. Now, some people are looking for that thing that just allows them to never have to work. And I think that's going to be a struggle. But for me, it was just more about doing something I remotely cared about. I just got lucky that I just love it. But I was just looking for something I remotely cared about, and something that gave me that freedom that I have. And now I've gotten there. So yeah.
Yeah, truly it is the laptop lifestyle, isn't it? I mean, you make your own hours, you work when you like I'll work at night once I get my boys down, and it really, you can design your life around your business that way. That's part of the beauty of the laptop lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like a lot of people are scared off by talking about that when you talk about the laptop lifestyle or working on the beach or whatever. They look at it as okay, so I've got to move to the Philippines and outsource everything and hang out on the beach. But look, I don't want to do that. Me personally, sure, the beach sounds awesome. I just want to be able to open my office door, run into the living room, and just pick my kid up and swing him around the living room, and then put him back down and come back to work. That's what I want. And to have that is the ultimate dream, and I have it.
Yeah, and I see this more and more. It's not just about people who desire to have that type of a lifestyle or be able to make that choice and improve their quality of life by doing that. But it's more and more, it's really just filling the gap in their business, their existing brick and mortar business, isn't it? There's so many people who have a brick and mortar that they could take those services and goods and they could actually create a digital product, a membership program or something like that and put it online. So it's really about filling the gap. Tim, I got to ask you, what is your superpower? What is your strength?
I'm a heck of an implementer. So That's like a horrible superhero name, the Implementer. But that's probably it. I'm not an idea guy. I actually am terrible with ideas. But once somebody says, here's the thing that I have in mind, can you make that a reality? That's me. Then I can do it. I'm pretty resourceful, and I'm good at just getting out there doing stuff, which is why I do the podcast and I do webinars, because I can go out there and I can, go here's some information, here's some training. If that leads you to want to do this other thing, then that's awesome. And if not, I hope it was valuable to you. So yeah, I guess implementer would be it.
How about your kryptonite? What is it? What is your weakness right now, like today in your business? Where do you see the holes?
I mean, there's so many. I have a lot, but I would say there's two things. One is just, I want to say time management, but it's not time management. It's my hard-nosed approach to the time that I'm spending on work. I'm very, very particular. I'm not willing to, unless it's absolutely necessary, I'm not interested in working a bunch of extra hours. And for entrepreneurs, we know that this is something that needs to be done from time to time. And so unless it's really critical, I pretty much try not to work past when I say I'm going to work. And that can hurt sometimes, because there are some times where doing that, putting in that extra hour or two could make a big difference, but I'm just not willing to. And then the other thing is, like I mentioned, I'm not an ideas guy, and most entrepreneurs kind of can benefit from being an ideas guy. So I've turned that into my strength and hired out the idea people. And now I can focus on what I'm good at, which is implement.
Outstanding. And, I got to tell you, I want to get a little tactical on this podcast. If you get the conversion educator from Lead Pages on a podcast, you better get tactical, right? Everyone's probably wondering right now. So here's what I want to do. I want to talk about cold leads, because I think honestly, that's where my business is at right now. It's like, look, I need to figure out, how can I reach more people? And then also, how can I nurture them in a way that they actually become fans, followers, and audience, and maybe get them across the money line? So here's my question. What is the best way right now, currently, that you're seeing to actually start to build up maybe an email list from cold leads, or attracting cold leads? Yeah,
so there's a couple of different ways. One is, and it's a little bit more expensive, but it's a pretty quick turnaround time, is using Facebook ads to drive them to a webinar registration page. And having that webinar registration page be not a webinar for like in the future, but an on-demand webinar where once they opt in, they're taken immediately to the I say live webinar page, but I mean the webinar page with the video on it. That's been really powerful, because we're in an on-demand culture. We want what we want when we want it. And when you can provide that in the form of a webinar, a training, right away, and say, look, here you go. This is pre-recorded, but you get it right now. You don't have to wait until next Thursday at 3 p.m. That's been really powerful, and it converts really well. The other thing, and this is a way to get leads for really inexpensive, is Facebook ads sent to a blog post. So you write up a blog post on whatever topic your audience is interested in. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not talking an epic. It doesn't have to be 9,000 words, right? But just a good blog post, a helpful, valuable blog post. Typically something that can be a step-by-step type thing. And then within that blog post, you use what we call a content upgrade. And a content upgrade is, it's an extra piece of content. It's some bonus thing that's related to the topic of the post. But in order for somebody to get that extra thing, they have to opt in. So for example, if you were a health coach and you wrote a blog post about your favorite superfoods and how to use them to have more energy, what a lot of people would do is they just put an opt-in form within that post that said subscribe for updates. But listen, my mailbox is already full. I don't need more updates, right? However, if I'm reading that post about superfoods, and within the post you had mentioned 5 or 10 superfoods, and then you say, to get our free recipe guide that includes recipes for 10 of the superfoods mentioned in this blog post, enter your email address and we'll send it to you. Well, now I want to opt in for that. And the fun part about it is, when you use a Facebook ad and you drive to a landing page, it's more expensive. Facebook charges you more. But when you're using a Facebook ad to a blog post, it's less expensive because you're not, quote unquote, trying to get a conversion. It's just a click. And so you're going to pay less for that, and you're going to get an insanely high conversion rate because the topic of the thing you're giving away to get them to opt in is the same as the topic of the blog post. And you know that if somebody's reading that blog post, they're interested in that topic. They're not just clicking an ad to check it out. They're actually reading the post and then opting in. So those are my two favorite cold traffic strategies.
So what would you say would be a good percentage for conversion then for, it's like if it was the webinar registration, so people clicking through to that and they're actually converting, or what would be a good percentage on the blog with the upgrade?
Yeah, so for the webinar registration page from cold traffic, 50 to 70% is what we're averaging. Now, that's not to say that if you're not getting 50%, it's not working out. What you want to do is you want to check the cost that it takes to actually get somebody to opt in, and then find out if those people are watching the webinar and buying. Because the thing is, I'm okay with, some people say, well, I try to get my cost per lead to like whatever dollar amount. But, if I'm going to profit, $500, I'm happy to spend $400, right? So obviously we're not going to try to get a $400 lead. But the idea is there that is, as long as you're profiting from all of this stuff that you're doing, it's great to get or it's okay to get a little lower conversion rate. As far as the blog post, our average content upgrade converts between 30 and 60%. It just depends on the topic of the post and the lead magnet. So if you're getting around 30% to people that click through, read, and opt in, that's pretty darn good.
That's those, honestly, I got to tell you, those are killer conversion percentages. I love those numbers. Now it feels like, just hearing this, I'm like, okay, I gotta improve what I'm doing here. I gotta improve my copy, or I gotta tweak things. I thought I was doing great at like 40%. But also again, at the end of the day, it does come down to, look, are you, one of my mentors asked me this. He goes like, are you making any money? And it's like, yeah, I'm generating revenue. I'm actually making a profit. So yeah, I'm not doing too bad, but I can see there's room for improvement. Thank you for that. Let me ask you this, Tim. What would you say? You were just at Podcast Movement even, for the weekend, and I'm sure you speak to a lot of aspiring online entrepreneurs all the time. But what is one of the most common misconceptions that aspiring online entrepreneurs often have that, you're just like, man, that drives me nuts?
I would say that it is something that one of two things: either that it's something that they can flip a few switches, set a few things up, put in a few $100s and buy a tool and be done. People get the idea that because it is because it's such a dream business, that we love what we do and we get all this freedom, that means that it's easy and that anyone can do it. But in reality, anyone could do it, but not everybody will do it. It actually is a lot of work, especially in the front end. That's the fun thing about this whole online world, is that it's very front loaded. So you're putting in a lot of the work in the beginning. Yes, eventually it slows way down. You have systems in place, you have things dialed in, and you don't have to do quite the work you had to do. But in the beginning, it's a lot of work. And that's one of the things that I think people misunderstand. The other thing is it's not so much a misconception, but it's just that people kind of misplace their attention in the beginning. So many people I see go, all right, I'm going to create my logo, my website, my content, got to create my product first, got to do this thing first, got to do that thing first. Well, what's interesting is that you can focus on one thing, do that one thing really well, and some of the other things will fall into place. I often recommend that there are two things that I encourage people to do right off the bat. The first thing is to start creating content, and you don't have to have some fancy schmancy blog to do it. You can get a basic free WordPress blog, right? Use WordPress.org, because then you can host it and do lots of things. But, you can get a basic blog up and start creating free content. And thing number two that you do that goes right along with that is focus on growing your list. Those two things are plenty. You don't need some amazing logo. You don't need to spend a bunch of money on Facebook ads. You don't need to be doing all these other crazy things. Start with that. Find out if anybody even gives a crap about what you have to say first.
Yeah.
And then when they do, and they're responding, and people are asking you questions, they'll tell you what they want more of. They'll tell you what their problems are. They'll tell you, a lot of times, they'll tell you what they think the solution is. And that will allow you then to not spend 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years creating something that you don't know if anybody wants. So creating content and growing your list builds that community that then that's your foundation that you can build your business on top of.
Tim, do you think that people are like entrepreneurs are putting way too much emphasis on list building these days versus, well, let me give you an example. I mean, I know that there's some people who are just killing it in the online world, like online business world, and they really don't even have a substantial list. They're doing it all through organic Facebook. Like they're not even paying for ads on Facebook and things like this. So do you think that just the way that things are progressing, that list, like the emphasis on having a massive list just seems to be less and less important?
No, I think that the emphasis on having a massive, gigantic list is overblown, but I do not believe that list building itself is something that is or should go away anytime soon. Here's the problem. If your whole business or a vast majority of your business is sitting on a foundation of something like Facebook, well, if one day Facebook says, you know what, we're going to change some things, and those things are some of what your business is resting on, then it's going to crumble. If one day Facebook says, you know what, Facebook business pages are not what we want to do anymore, so now nobody will see what you post. Or if they say, oh, Facebook communities have this rule, that rule, and the other rule, blah, 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 well, that changes everything. And now you have to recalculate your business. But your email list is your email list. You have those people's information, and people say, well, can't email service providers go down? Yes, but you still have that list. You can still download that list at any time, and you should be backing up your lists. But you always have that list that you can stay in touch with. You can always get to people's mailboxes. Their email is not going away. And so we always want to have that asset that we own. But again, people think you have to have 500,000 subscribers to have a substantial business. I know people with 1,000 subscribers that are doing 6 figures a year.
Yeah, that's true.
So you don't need a massive list. You do need an engaged list, and that's something else that we can talk about.
Yeah, that would be a whole other podcast, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I can give a perfect example of the conversation I had with an application to work with me today, and it was someone who heard me speak in October of last year. No, actually, it would have been even further back than that. It was almost like, I guess, maybe even like 10 months ago. They heard me speak in Florida. They were like kind of on the fence at that time of whether they wanted to connect with me and work with me. And then they're like, but then I saw you on social media. And then you were emailing me. So apparently like she'd opted in for a gift that I had given for people to jump on when I spoke. And so it was that consistent connection of sending out valuable emails to that person that eventually they made they pull the trigger and they actually become part of my group. And, so I think that's a really good point that you make. It is, maybe we could even say the quality of your list is really what's important, plus also communicating and nurturing your list.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. So Tim, we're at the part of the podcast that I call Who Makes It Rain. So I'm going to try and make this, I call it, this will be interesting for you. I'll see how you answer this. But basically, it's like you're in this room, okay? I want you to imagine this room of incredibly successful, self-made online entrepreneurs. Now, who makes it rain? Like, who makes the business windfall happen? Is it the person with the most leads? Is it the person who can make the most sales? Is it the person who has the best systems and automation? Who makes it rain, Tim?
I think that that all of them combined together, working together, make it rain the most, obviously. I'm not sure that there is necessarily just one of them, and I don't think that there are many people out there that can only do one of those things, right? So if you can grow a big email list but none of them buy, are you making it rain? If you can sell a bunch of stuff but you can't get a darn lead to save your life, are you making it rain? Right? And so I don't think it's necessarily any individual thing. Now, the other answer to that question is people often say, like, what should I do first? What should I learn first? That's one of the things that a lot of people ask me, like, what's the first skill I should learn? Because they'll come to me and say, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur. What should I do? I'll tell them, well, you should learn the skills to become an entrepreneur. Well, what's the first skill I should learn? And I often will tell them the first skill you should learn is actually copywriting. So what I've found actually is that the best copywriter many times can make it rain above all else. A skilled copywriter can make just about anything work. we're not all born copywriters, but you can learn it fairly easily. Yeah. And that is actually the first skill I recommend for most folks, because copywriting means that you can get people to click through to check out your page, that you can get them to opt in, that you can get them to register, and many times that you can get them to buy. So that's the first skill I would learn, but I'm not sure any of them make it rain above the others.
And so, Tim, how can the Laptop Lifestyle listeners actually learn more about you, actually follow you? Where can they reach out and actually connect with you?
I'll break this into different buckets. Here we go. If you love comic books, on Instagram at the voice of Tim Paige.
Beautiful.
If you just want to check me out, my general stuff that I talk about, I'll talk about marketing, voiceover, comics, Disney, whatever. Twitter at Tim the Page. But if you're looking to grow your email list, I do a live webinar. It's every single week at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. And you can register for that at leadpageswebinar.com. And if you have a podcast or you enjoy voiceover, you want to hire me for that stuff, you can find me at makemyintro.com.
Okay, so Laptop Lifestyle listeners, you can head over to thelaptoplifestylepodcast.com. I'm actually going to have clickable links to all of the resources that Tim just listed there. Now, if you're one of the 60% of people, maybe even more, 70% of people listening on your mobile today, go ahead and actually expand open those notes. The clickable links will be right there, and you can connect with Tim right away. All right, Tim, I got to tell you, man, this has been amazing. Actually, really inspired me today to take my business and look at, how I'm doing my lead generation to the next level. So I got to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and also giving back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Hey, I want to thank you for listening today. And if you're new to the podcast, head over to thelaptoplifestylepodcast.com and hear more from 6, 7, and 8-figure online entrepreneurs. Even better, head over to iTunes, give us a rating and review, and that will help us help more aspiring online entrepreneurs. Appreciate you and see you on the next Laptop Lifestyle podcast.